walk in the evening after Thanksgiving, and ended up like a neighbor just called us into their yard and ended up spending like 2 hours just hanging out with neighbors and getting to know them, which was really cool because we just did Thanksgiving, just the two of us with Emily and I. So it was nice to kind of have that like little bit of a family atmosphere without being around family. So I always like cool, unexpected experiences like that.
Human connection.
Yeah.
They sound like good neighbors, I hope too.
Oh yeah. They had bourbon. So, I mean, it was an easy stop.
Easy win.
That's the walk you take with the dog now. Just stop by.
You guys still there?
Hey, you're gonna get home and Emily's gonna be like, "That was a really long walk."
There's a
Shorter than 12 miles.
yeah, there's a really funny like dad video of a guy that's like, all right, honey, I'm heading out. I'm gonna go do my workout, go to the gym, and he like walks over to the side of the house where there's a blind spot and has like a cooler and everything set up, and he's watching football. And then his like buddy comes out and ruins it for him. It's hilarious.
Oh, good.
All right, we will get started if everybody's pretty much here. It looks like. Thank you guys for coming. I'm gonna share my screen as we get rolling. All right. Can everybody see that nice and big?
Nope.
Good? Okay, got it. All right. So welcome everybody tonight for, is anybody here from the Connecticut crew? Anybody else on the East Coast? And Mike, you are on the East Coast, right? Yeah, so you're late night.
I think I'm the only one, and we sent it out to the new Denver crew too. And I don't think with the notice that they just couldn't make it tonight, but they're excited to kind of take a look at the first couple here and hopefully join us for the fourth one. So we'll see what happens.
That's great. I think it's been wonderful to even see them online already, like seeing them on social. They seem like an active group, and that's really been fun to see already. All right, so tonight we have Ceci Craft, I'm gonna introduce her in a minute, but we're doing this Master of the Mind kind of duo. We've got part one tonight, and we've got a part two for it next week, or I guess 2 weeks from now, and we'll go over that at the very end, what that's gonna look like. So welcome everybody tonight. Our rundown, like we try and do every time for tonight. Welcome back. Expectations for today, we're gonna go over. We're going to introduce Ceci. Then we're going to talk about some of the battle drills and cultural things that we've talked about in previous weeks. Maybe get a little bit more input from you guys because you've seen some of these things a couple weeks building into what we have tonight. So there's going to be a little bit more engagement that we're going to look for from you guys. So, we'll either do hands, raising hand, or you guys can just pop in if it's not too chaotic, and we can roll that way. So then we're going to go over this preparing for calmness or chaos again, look at those steps to creating new baselines. And we're going to talk about your break system. And that's where Ceci's going to come in with her deliberate breathing work. It's the most fun part, I think. And it's really great to have at the end of the day. And then we're going to do this thing called Menti. This group, I don't believe, has done this yet. But have your phones, or you can do it on your computer nearby. It's a really easy website. We'll have you click on your phone. It's just like menti.com, and I'll give you a code when that time is right, but just be ready for that. It's toward the middle. It's toward the end of the presentation. So just want to give you a heads up on that. And then we'll have 2 opportunities for Q&A. We'll have a little Q&A, mini Q&A about Ceci's work that you guys can focus on. And then we're going to open it up to what do you have any questions about overall? So talking about the expectations for tonight, we've talked about this idea before of discomfort creating a new threshold for us. That point where vulnerability meets interconnectedness, not only with ourselves, but with our teammates. This discomfort delivers these 2 conditions where obviously we can feel that intense vulnerability. And tonight might not be super intense because we get to be in our comfort zones at home. It's not like we're sitting in the same room as each other. but at times it can still feel vulnerable if you haven't done a lot of meditation or breath work or anything like that. So we just encourage everyone to kind of understand that it may feel uncomfortable, but that's going to create this deep interconnectedness that we're all going through this together tonight, and that's part of this teamwork. And introducing Ceci, I've always said that this is like one of my favorite episodes, if you will. Ceci is a certified mental performance coach, and I know that Mike's sister has just recently achieved her certification as well, so congratulations to her. I didn't see her pop in, but please send her my best, Mike, if you talk to her. So Ceci created something called the All Terrain Project, and that's a really great outdoor thing. It's on hold right now, but she would take, hold on one second, somebody's getting admitted into the room. Let me see if I can, oh shoot. I don't know if I can do that from my computer.
I got them. They're admitted.
Oh, you got it? Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Flow on.
Trying. Okay. So Ceci does a thing, the All Terrain Project, that she can talk about later if you guys would like. But it's an outdoor kind of experience that really gets people uncomfortable and gets them working together. And she's been blending her experience working with the Special Forces community for 6 years on Fort Bragg in North Carolina, training Special Forces soldiers on the mental component of performance. She also works in professional baseball with the Cleveland Indians, where she spent 6 seasons on the coaching staff. Ceci was the first woman to be hired into a full-time mental performance position in Major League Baseball, and she still supports the Indians and their amateur draft process, even though she came back to North Carolina and is working at Fort Bragg right now. So Ceci's educational background is in applied sports science with a focus on sports psychology. And as I don't know if Mike got a chance to tell you guys yet, but we have the guidebook that you guys can be filling out when you go home. If anybody has it tonight, Ceci's section is going to happen around page 21 in the guidebook. So you've got a small section that we're going to go over tonight. And when you open that guidebook, you'll be able to get familiar with like, oh, that was what we did in the presentation. So at this point, Eric, did you want to hop in on this platoons?
Yeah, I think you may want to share your screen again.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it hopped off when I got off that.
I tried our covert signal, but the bat signal didn't work either. So.
Because you know why? Because my it turned off my ability to see the whole Zoom. How are we here?
Beautiful.
Okay.
So if you remember the platoons, first platoon, second platoon, we looked at some videos, we heard some clips, and so we're going to revisit that. But I'm challenging this group to look with different eyes and hear with different ears. And because we've done a little bit of training, because you may be a little more initiated now, I want you to look with more intention. And so when we look at the first team, it'll be second platoon. Look at how they interact. Try and listen to how they sound, the expressions that they use. Hey, they didn't tell me this, or what's going on over here, and just kind of get that vibe and that energy of what may be happening there as a unit. And then when we see first platoon, we're going to see another angle and just do a quick comparative analysis as a mental model of a visual depiction there.
You missed it. Wow. That's what's up. That building is gone. Jesus Christ. Holy shit. That was a cache. Oh, that's the cache blowing up? Fuck. That was just the cache. I think they're blowing the cache, aren't. They didn't give us a warning at all. So.
Okay, so that is just again a refresher. That first explosion, that was the 500-pound bomb that we'd ordered to that compound, and that followed that big firefight from our first engagement. If you remember that, pretty intense keynote piece there. So now we're going to see our platoon, first platoon, literally a couple hundred feet from that initial explosion. And again, this is 5 o'clock in the afternoon. This is after an all-day firefight that was complete and utter chaos all day long. And again, after a horrific event of prolonged exposure to a really dangerous thing, look at the facial expressions, look at the smiles, the smirks, listen to the sounds. And again, comparatively, this group you just saw is, you know, they're far removed from the fight and they're still standing around looking. And now these are the people who were in the fight literally all day long. And you just see the dichotomy of difference and how those teams approach a fight that can happen to any one of us.
Fuck yeah, motherfucker! Fuck yeah, bitch! That just happened. There they are. There's the man who did it. Keep going, guys. There
Right. Sorry for the warning there if there are any small kids around. But again, super intense, a massive release of emotion, as you can imagine. A lot of screaming. It sounds like a party, actually. But you know, most importantly, was the expression on their faces, the smiles. To go through a situation like that and to still have that sense of morale. And how I equate this is, you know, Evolution. You guys are sitting there, literally spread throughout the country, coast to coast, and now in Colorado. And a position I'll challenge each one of the leaders on this call is don't ever be the platoon just staring, looking from afar, wondering, you know, I hope they got it figured out, right? Because you don't know if they have it figured out. And what could you be doing to actively help another team or another clinic instead of saying, well, sucks for them, man. I hope they figure that out, you know, or they didn't tell me what's going on, so I don't really know. It's, you know, what is that team fight? Like, what are we doing to support each other? What are you doing to maneuver to say, well, shit, if they just got into this fight, they may need X, Y, Z, and I can help solve maybe some of their future problems. I may not be able to do their current fight, but man, how could I support them elsewise? So how to make this relatable to you all? I'm gonna let Alexis kind of pivot our way through this, but again, that's the context of how do you all look at each other, and when one of you is in contact, how are you supporting each other?
Yeah, and I think this is a great time for us to get a little engagement from you guys. If anybody has worked on these from last week, this is a chart that we put up last week to just compare and contrast, and we're reminding tonight. I know Mike did some time diving into this himself, but you know, looking at this line and seeing that there's like a great retention rate in one side that want to come back, want to re-enlist. And there's another side that's saying things like, I hate the Army, and are we done yet? And one side saying it's cool to care and like they have a great morale and swagger about them. And then another that's like, when are we leaving? And obviously that stuff can happen from, you know, you've got an overall culture, but you've also got these subcultures. So if there's something that pops out to you about your individual location or task force, or Evolution PT overall, let's pop in now and just see if there's anything that you think that you could fill out for one of these. Anybody have anything?
This is Kelly from the Santa Monica Clinic. I would say with the last one, the approach to daily life, that our team here with Cindy as our leader does a really good job at putting the patient first. And I think that that's really key. Just having that intention with putting the patient first allows a lot of other things to naturally fall into place and have patients be really happy with their care here.
It's a really nice thing that you've even recognized that. So clearly, like, her behavior or her approach is something that other people can see and feed off of. And I think that's wonderful. You've even, acknowledged it.
Hey, Alexis. This is Devin here. I think the morale component, it just made me kind of think a little bit. Like, so today we had a little like holiday luncheon, and we were playing a little bit of a cornhole tournament at our clinic down in Hawthorne, and I was playing with one of our aides, Asha, and like when we won, she started like running around the clinic, like pumping her fist, celebrating, and it just made me think like, like that's the type of stuff that then kind of rubs off on patients. And like, one of our patients was actually had gotten there a little early after our thing for his session, and he was watching from like the recumbent bike, and he's laughing over there. And it's one of those things where I think it's just that type of morale, that type of energy is contagious, and it helps your coworkers, it helps all your patients. It's going to give better patient care, throughout the day if everyone carries that on.
Yeah, I think these are such interesting perspectives you guys are bringing, because in a way, I love hearing that like your lens may be different than if you'd had this a couple weeks back, if we'd had this holiday party or some other holiday, some other party that might have happened. You go, oh, that was so funny. She's so cool. But now you're looking at it perhaps in a way that's like more impactful on the environment, the culture of the team, and then also the patients, obviously, and how that affects them. So I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, to piggyback on Mike Herrera here from Beverly Hills Clinic, to piggyback on Devin's cornhole, we had a pretty surreal experience today in our holiday party. Like this competition that was friendly and supportive, but it ended with our PTs versus our aid staff and PCS staff has like a head-to-head cornhole challenge, and one of the members clearly never played the game before and was not the most skilled cornhole player, I would say, but in the intense rivalry going back and forth, it came down to the final shot, and she was the one to nail it. And it was just like an eruption of like everyone from bystander just watching, like, oh my God, that just happened. And like, it was just kind of this surreal, like that energy is just, it's super contagious, right? And like, you see that 20 minutes, hour, 2 hours later, where everyone's just kind of vibing and like on the way out, hey, great shot earlier. Like it's one of those things that just kind of, you enjoy seeing. And it's the Game 7 World Series. It's the whole team running out on the field, Yeah.
That's so awesome. Like, it doesn't take World Series stakes and TV and all. No offense, Ceci, because I think that she may have a World Series ring or something. But that's so wonderful. And like, what great timing to have the holiday party happening right now. I love that. That's so great. Eric, did you have anything to add there? You look like you're glowing.
Oh my God, I love that. That's so great. I mean, I have to acknowledge, right, the contagious feeling of spreading those good vibes, and then really being able to put your hair down and be vulnerable with each other to be able to play. And I just wanted that my observation for someone to run around the clinic that joyfully, that's playful. And when you're having that much fun and you're playing that much, I mean, that is a contagious thing. And then for someone who's never even played, and you have this hyper competitive environment, yet she felt safe and vulnerable enough to play, and then supported enough to hit the clutch shot. I mean, what's her nickname? Like Sure Shot? I don't know. Should we sign her? I mean, so I just think those are really special moments that it's really refreshing. I'm glowing because you all reflected on these things, that you all are observing them within your own teams. And those little light bulb moments are not little. Those are beacons of very bright lights during very shitty days. And so I think those are really special moments to amplify. So yeah, that's a great share. That's a really good share.
Yeah, I'll add to that, in a way here, what we're doing is train the trainer kind of work. You get to go and see that. I would love to have been a fly on the wall watching everybody in that whole encounter all through all of the holiday parties. But now you guys can be doing that, like really looking at the teams a different way, whether it's lunch or your regular rounds and stuff, or a holiday party is a great time to see personalities come out.
I mean, I just see like Sports Center top 10. I mean, they're doing all kinds of organic, home competitions. And I just see like someone, in the, filming it in, holiday party, and then boom, they hits it and the place goes nuts. And I mean, talk about social media exposure there, about the clinic having fun, like doing things differently. I mean, yeah, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
really
I
good
saw
stuff.
Katie log on. So everybody, if you ever have any videos, send them to Katie. We can put those things together. Anybody else?
I'm over at the Playa Vista Clinic. Just like with everything going on, like a lot of people are having like different family issues, and figuring out how to get through the holidays and having some different experiences. And we have this like little office where all the PTs document together. And we were all kind of in that office, and one PT started talking about something that was difficult with their day, and all this kind of stuff, and everyone like dropped what they were doing to listen and support that person. And one of the PTs turned around and just said, like, these four walls, like, this is us, like, whatever you need, like, we're here. And then like you step outside that door and like we have to do our job, but like in here, like, you're always welcome to say whatever you want. And like I like literally that was on the tip of my tongue, and the fact that someone else said it, and like that the culture was there for the support for that physical therapist was huge, because I feel that safety every day when I come into work. And the fact that that everyone's feeling that is really cool.
Wow, like that is, first of all, like you said, like it's happening is so cool, but that you didn't, like, you might have had it on the tip of your tongue but didn't have to say it. And that's the goal, is like the whole group really absorbing it. And how did that feel, like that moment of like that it's reflecting back to you?
Yeah, no, it's really cool. Like it just makes you like, especially when we're not seeing our family, like Evolution is kind of is our family right now. So like to have that and like feel safe when you walk in the door, no matter what kind of day you're having. Like if you need 5 seconds to talk about something so that you can do your job better, and we can provide that higher level of care for all of our patients, just by having that 5 seconds of like, I need to say something to someone and I feel supported, and I know that they're going to support me and know where I'm coming from in a positive way, and never think that it's like negative, is, you don't want to be negative all the time, but everyone has things that come up, especially now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that video that Eric showed of, the big bomb and everybody being all hyped about it, I think that's like how COVID feels. Like you guys are going through being in the trench, like when you're like kind of some days having those times when you just feel like the world is crashing in, and like, am I going to get through this month, this day, this hour? And then you get through it, and you can look around those walls and be like, yes, like this is our safe place. This is where we huddle up. It's our ready room, like as Eric might call it. All right, we'll move along here. So Eric's going to talk a little bit again about these steps toward preparing for calmness and then bring it to chaos. I'm sorry, for chaos and bring it to calmness.
So again, I'm gonna make it relatable from where this stuff comes from, and if it's effective in combat and in the stakes are really high, I hope it's relatable to us in our everyday use. And so we're looking at stepping up towards a much more intense engagements. And so we have there again the presence patrol. You're out there walking out in sector, engaging with the populace. It's not very stressful. Then you're going to do a raid, right? Intentionally going after, targeting someone or something to go do, and that's your mission. And then you're going after a high value target, or an HVT, right? Like Osama bin Laden, AMZ, Abu Zarqawi, excuse me. You go after someone like that. Those are very bad people who don't want to be caught. And when you're going after them, the outcome for being untrained or not being prepared is it could be death. Conversely, if you look at training, mental models, stress mitigation tools, stress inoculation, you can create and set a new baseline for yourself. And if energy is contagious and fun is contagious, I promise you, so is chaos. But most importantly, calm is also contagious. And in the midst of that chaotic moment, the person who is calm, cool, and collected is a savior. And so the challenge is for each one of you to be that savior and what does that look like? So let's move to the next one and make it relatable to what's in your world. And again, we have, the stepping of stressful events. COVID begins, uncertainty ahead. This lockdown thing is happening. And then we have this election, which has come and gone, but it's still kind of lingering because it is what it is. So that's creating its own polarity of stress. Restrictions continue, and now we're in the holiday season. And now there's a second wave or third wave coming. And now, what does this future look like? And that could look like we're unemployed and out of business on one end if we don't have a handle of things. Conversely, through training, mental models, culture, relying on each other, having fun with each other, you're establishing a new baseline right now, as uncomfortable as it is. And what happens when you emerge out of stress and chaos, when you're calm, cool, and collected, you become an industry leader. You develop an international presence. Lacrosse is on the trajectory to be an Olympic sport. How cool is it going to be when Evolution Physical Therapy is the preferred provider for physical therapy on an Olympic platform? Because you guys are doing what needs to be done right now, day in and day out. And when that nod is looked at, who are we going to partner? Who's the collaborator? Well, God, who's expanding during a pandemic? You guys and girls, gals, right? All of you are doing these things. So making it relatable to what you're seeing and feeling in your foxholes and clinics, I think is really important. And to not give tummy rubs and just pats on the back and say like, hey, it's rainbows and cupcakes, because you all have to do the work and you have to come in with the smiles and figure out how to be the best versions of yourselves for yourselves. But more importantly, I think this group is special because you're making yourselves better for each other. That's what I'm seeing and feeling. And that's the most selfless form of this type of work. You're doing it selflessly for each other, and everything you've said is about one another. So those are the things, those are the ingredients that really make something special for an organization, a team to have. So again, visual depiction of, someone going off the rails and someone stay in the course and move that timeline out. A lot of good benefit comes out of these sorts of things. And you look back at these events as rally points and rally cries. Well, if we figured out during pandemic, when physical therapy, you have to physically touch people and act with them, and that's prevented, and you still figure out how to overcome and adapt. That gives you a lot of credibility.
Yeah, so I think what Eric's really saying well here is like we almost see you guys as a team that's taking the field every day, or the court every day when you're walking out and on the floor with your patients. Obviously, when you're doing your training work, that's getting the clinic better, getting you better, but also you guys take it out on the field every day in a way, and being prepared and considering yourselves like athletes in a way. That's also what we're taking to this process. So we talked about this last time as an introduction, and we kind of started this conversation with you guys on the fly at the moment, but we've had a little bit of time to think about it. I'm wondering, what do you need to do without being told, wiping down something for somebody because they're busy, or just because you feel the need to do that, making calls, or what problems can you not solve on your own? Are there any restrictions or limitations on you, or perceived limitations that you may have? And what can you solve on your own? So what are those things that you do day to day that you can do routinely because you have a high standard that we do this, then we do this, then we do this, and patient first. We put our patient first. That's like what we have as a battle drill and a rally cry in a way. Anybody have anything to share? I think Chelsea, last time you had said you had shared battle drills that you have either for yourself, or was it in your clinic? I can't remember.
They were for me, but
Yeah.
hoping to expand to the clinic, I guess I should say.
Right.
But it was just welcoming everyone with a smile when they come to the clinic, and then saying thank you to the entire staff at the end of the day for what they've done for me.
Right. So simple, right? It sounds like that's making a difference in their cohesion. It's like they're not huge, right? They're not like massive efforts. Not every day is a holiday party, and these things can happen in the moment. Just keeping your eyes peeled for things. Anybody else?
I think a simple thing is just people do things during the day that aren't their job. And that is so impactful to, one, realize it's not your job, and two, to do it. And we just see these constant examples of people doing that kind of stuff over and over and over again. And that's one of the most empowering things to see in the clinic, I would say.
Yeah, I think like along the lines of that, like one of the things I thought about with this last time was just like, you know, with all the cleaning we have to do right now with COVID, you know, literally every piece of equipment, everything that's touched, you know, it's just become natural reaction for, you know, our PTs when we're done with, you know, a band, a weight, the table, to immediately, you know, spray it down and give it the time it needs to sit before we can kind of wipe it and all that stuff, instead of like, you know, just waiting for the aide to come and do it after, you know, so everyone kind of picking up and doing their part for the cleaning. You know, it's just one like simple thing on that, but it's something where like now doing that repetitively, like you don't have to think about it. It just, you know, you just do it, you know, and it's something that makes everyone's life a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's one of those things that's like how you do anything is how you do everything, and I think that that reflects in moments like that. Do you feel like you can feel a certain momentum in the air when that stuff is going on? Because I know you guys have a pace, and that must have changed a bit when you had to start doing these cleanings. We were like at the first, you're just kind of like looking around, going like the aide has to get to this, and now I'm waiting, and this one's not ready. And have you seen a shift at all in that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think early on there will be times where it could feel a little bit almost like disorganized because like you might not have access to something that you were ready for, you weren't sure if something got cleaned or not yet, and then it's just become a lot, you know, a lot more, you know, it's just natural now where it's done and like okay, and everyone has this like, you know, communication, like almost you can kind of look at each other's eyes and know like, oh, okay, like that's done, we're ready to go. So it's just that kind of teamwork component.
Eric's exploding. So, Eric, did you have anything to share?
I mean, just when we talk about, you know, elite communication, you know, being able to communicate with nonverbal looks and eyes, you know, knowing that someone has your back and is looking at these things. God, that's when someone talks about, you know, sharing a glance and just getting that nod and knowing what's up. Again, I immediately go back to being under suppressive enemy machine gun fire, like in their crosshairs, and I'm looking at Reyes, and we're literally smirking at each other, kind of nodding like, "I got you, we got this." And I know, you know, it's a different context, but the essence of that bond and that shared understanding is a priceless thing, and that connection, like we opened up with, is a really powerful thing. Fire me up.
Right. All right, I'm gonna move along.
Yeah. So the true believer. I'm gonna just read this again. I think it's an important thing, and I'm just gonna give a different perspective on it. Somewhere, a true believer is training to kill you. He is training with minimum food or water in austere conditions, day and night. The only thing clean on him is his weapon. He doesn't worry about what workout to do. His rucksack weighs what it weighs, and he runs until the enemy stops chasing him. The true believer doesn't care how hard it is. He knows either he wins or he dies. He doesn't go home at 1700. He is home. He only knows the cause. Now who wants to quit? We see Evolution PT as a premier elite level physical therapy organization and team. And you guys got there by focusing on yourselves. And so we're going to keep the focus on yourselves. And when you reach this level, there's an operational environment that I think there's a level of empowerment and awareness that benefits the organization when everyone, including the owner, down to the lowest level employee, understands that there's a true believer outside of Evolution PT, that there's a true believer out there that wants that PLL contract. There's there's a PT organization out there that wants to be the Olympic provider for all sports. There's a true believer in Beverly Hills. There's a true believer in Stamford, Connecticut. There's a true believer in Denver, Colorado. Whether you see him or her or not, and whether they're overtly trying to take your clients or to take your ideas, I'm not saying to be paranoid, but the level of awareness that you all as an organization growing, and when you build and you grow, that attracts more energy and positivity, but also attracts the haters, if you will. So if it hasn't happened, this is the reality check to prepare that, hey, you may get some haters out there. Hey, you may have some competition out there. Hey, you may have another organization try to poach one of your top PTs or poach a whole club from you. And so again, it's not to be paranoid, and it's to focus inward on what all are you doing as a team. And again, culture is a team fight for the true believer. And that's how you overcome that true believer. It's as an organizational strength and a will to overcome and endure. That makes sense.
Yeah, and we left some slots here for you guys to pop in. We aren't going to take too long on this, but if you guys could educate us on some of the names of the competition that you see in either the whole area, like I know there are some national PTs, but PT offices and stuff. But if you guys could shout out some of the ones, or maybe you could put it in the chat, the competitors that are in your locations or for all of Evolution.
I would say that you kind of put it really well in the beginning, where we focus on ourselves, and I think that that's very true to this group, where I'm not even concerned about the other PT clinics around us. I know that it's true, but I wouldn't even dignify this situation with an answer to that question, because it's all about us.
That's a great response. I mean, I think that it's, Eric and I were just talking today. There's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. And the concept of that is that when you're looking at your competition, you're in a red ocean and you're really just looking at what's existing already. And we love that response, because you're looking toward this blue ocean of possibilities and creating your own path. So I 100% respect that.
Well, and I would also say that our competition really is us, right? Like, we can compete. We know that we have some of the best PTs out there, and we can compete against each other to make our entire crew better. And if that's not the best competition, I don't know what is. I feel like we're surrounded with the best people. So let's compete against each other. Let's continue to get better. Let's compete against our own systems. Let's make them better. Let's compete against our own ideas, make them better. In every facet of the way, if we do that, we continue to push ourselves. There's certainly things that we look at out there as examples for ways to also get us better. But I think that truth comes in at itself. So I don't want to speak for everybody on the call, but that's just how I feel.
I think I almost look at it more as same idea as Mike, but the more of the competition is complacency, not continuing to get better and not continuing to push for, almost that's kind of feels like more of the competition to me, because we're in this profession where you have to constantly learn and improve, because science is always changing. You're always staying on top of it, and you're always learning new techniques, and you're always so I almost see it more as complacency is the enemy.
Yeah, I like it.
I agree. I feel like I'll piggyback off what Mike said, just because I know in our marketing meetings, it's been said just to focus on what we're doing, and just focus on being extremely, extremely good at what we're doing, and just being excellent in that fashion. And I mean, when you do that, you again are kind of like what Chelsea said, you're not being complacent, because you're focused on everything that you are responsible for, right? Which is, what did you say? What's the saying? Nobody's coming to save you. That's it.
That's
right?
it. That's it. That's one of them.
It is.
That's the one my daughter wrote on a notepad for me earlier tonight. She's like, "What? No one's coming to save me?" I was like, "There's an explanation to it, but yes." All right, to that point, Eric, take it from here.
Yeah, so this brings us to another good segue of, going through, like Katie just mentioned, and I think Mike alluded to it as well. Again, mantras, algorithms, these rules are designed for every member of the team on a mission, on the objective, to know what to do at any given time. And so, what we already heard Mike's talking about, people who, know it's not their job, but they still do the thing. They still pick up the trash, they still clean the equipment, they still do whatever the job is. So really that sounds like
Somebody's microphone on. Does
responsibility.
anybody hear that?
Yeah, I was just looking for the mute button on my thing that my mouse is not working right, so I can't click on people to mute. Let me see if I can get it here.
Whoever's the iPhone is not muted.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, somebody. I don't think it's you, Alexis.
Okay.
That's sweet.
All right.
Back to silence. All right. So, you're already observing, everything is your responsibility. You're starting to see these things start to come out and play. And I think kill what needs to be killed. I just want to kind of touch on that again. And that's not saying to be the ultimate tough guy and to just take on everything and to be able to just do and do and do. Or, never complain and just, kill what needs to be killed. Like, I'm never not allowed to feel like an off day. I'm never allowed to be off my game. And I think you're demonstrating the ability to have that. Hey, we're inside of our full four walls. Like, what do you need for us to support you as PTs, as teammates? And like, when we leave this room, we'll all be better for it. But we have to have that element of vulnerability with each other to let us know, like, hey, I see you today, and you don't look like you're on top of it. And it's like, yo, hey, I'm having a rough day. I just got really bad news about X, Y, or Z. That vulnerability is needed. It's like a requirement of this thing. So again, the kill what needs to be killed. That's not an advocation for violence at all, but it's also not a pretense to be a super tough macho person who is unhelpable or unsavable within that context. So, and again, no one is coming to save you. When you have that mantra and that thought process as an energy and fuel source, that can provide a really interesting source of energy. So now, without further ado, really want to transition. That was a kind of recap and relaying previous weeks to where you are today and what we're seeing and evolving. And I want to hand it over to Ceci, but Alexis covered a lot of really good high notes for Ceci. And I'll also say that Ceci was the one who trained me, and Ceci's the one who turned my perspective and flipped it on its head and showed me another way. You don't always have to run through the wall. You can think through it, and understanding how to break and how to slow down, to take those pauses and to take those moments for yourself. But more importantly, that helps the team. And there are tools and techniques that she has a whole plethora of them, but we'll jump into that. So again, it's if she's able to work in and around some pretty alpha types whose lives are on the lines on a routine basis, I'm really excited for her to relate these skills to you all as well. So my personal hero, Ceci.
I don't know if I can live up to that one, Eric, but thank you. Awesome talking to you guys all tonight. Excited to dig into some of the mental game behind performance. I know it's something that's constantly at play for all of us, especially within COVID and the fall we've had and social injustice and everything that's kind of going on and all the pressures that exist. So when I think about the most elite performers I have ever been around, I think one of the things that is amazing to me is that they're good at the basics. And oftentimes their focus is on the basics. The first set of Green Berets I ever worked with, I spent 6 weeks with them on a range and then got to work with them kind of intensely. And the phrase that we all kind of settled on at the end that they taught me was, there's no such thing as an advanced gunfight.
That basically when people go to exchange fire, when people are fighting for their lives, there's nothing advanced about it. It's a basic skill, and it's how well do you do the basics. It was kind of hilarious because I was with them for an advanced urban combat course, suggesting that they were learning advanced stuff, but it still all came back to basics. And I think that's true for the mental game as well. And so when I look at elite performers across professional sport, across the military, they have performance habits that work for them. They have patterns of life that they maintain, that they have figured out that work well for them consistently. They recognize that they can be getting better at their craft, they can be getting better physically, or they can be getting better mentally, and they are always figuring out how to get better. And they also have started to accept that they are abnormal. So if you consider for a second that the best in the world are by definition an outlier, they're by definition different from most people, they've accepted that their habits, their mindset, and the way they go about things is going to be abnormal for most of the world. And so you'll see me on social media, hashtag outlier mindset. We talked a lot with our baseball players about being an outlier and being okay being an outlier and being okay being different. And so as you guys are all talking about the character or the things that come up when your team's together as a clinic, I love the idea of like, it's okay to have fun. It's okay to have someone celebrating and running around. It's okay to be different. It's okay for that vibe or that feel when people walk into Evolution to be different. You want to be the outlier. You want to be the high performing side. So kind of loved hearing the stories early on. And so I got some really amazing experiences to go from 6 years initially with the military into pro sport for 6 seasons and then back into a military setting. And one of the things that was really interesting to me is when I stepped into the baseball setting, a lot of the coaches, and it was major league coaches, would say, Ceci, we know you've worked with elite soldiers. You need to be careful. Our baseball players are not those elite soldiers. They're not built the same. They're not going to be able to do the same stuff. So you need to be a little careful with our guys. And I was kind of blown away by this, right? Here I am working with Major League Baseball players and I'm getting told to be careful. And I felt like I was missing something because to me, I was working with a similar age population. They were 18 to young 30s. At 28, both populations tried to tell me they were old. It felt very similar to me, these two groups of men that I had been working around. And so one day we had a Navy SEAL that came in during spring training. He was a born and raised Clevelander, and he had made friends with some of our coaching staff, and his team happened to be in Arizona where we were having spring training. And so they invited him in to actually talk to the team after they got to know him a bit. And so this guy walked in with two of his buddies from his SEAL team, one of which had been shot in the elbow. So he had a huge like bursitis looking thing on his elbow. They were gnarly, tatted up guys, and they walk in and they get in front of the major league clubhouse. Our manager introduces them and he says, we've asked this guy to come in and talk about kind of his 10 keys to success. And so he opens up this little black book and he starts to talk about his 10 keys to performance and success. And I'm watching him and he's shaking. His knees are shaking. The book is shaking. You can't hear it in his voice. If you weren't looking at him, you'd have no clue. But watching him, he's shaking. So I start nudging my pitching coach, Mickey, at the time. And I'm like, Mickey, are you seeing this? He's like, what? I'm like, look at his leg. He's like, he's shaking. And I was like, yeah, he's nervous as hell. He's talking to a bunch of MLB guys that are his hero. He's nervous right now. He's like, but I couldn't hear it. And I was like, no, he's still performing, but he's nervous right now. And I said, this is the deal. You guys tell me I have to be careful with these baseball players, but we're all human. We all have these things in common. There's no some like magical cape that you give Superman or you give Eric when he deploys and they get to go be someone that the rest of us aren't. We're all human. It's just what we do with our habits, with our day, with our time, with our mindset that changes stuff. And so from that point forward, it was this amazing opportunity to talk about you're really not all that different from the people that you look at and you think they somehow have something you don't. We had the opportunity to get a lot of special forces families and guys up to baseball games, and they used to get to throw out first pitches for us a couple times a year. And one of my favorite things was watching the guys, they'd throw out the first pitch and then they like race off the mound. We called it a range walk, where they would move fast as you could at a walking pace. And it just always, it was always a good reminder of like, hey, they get nervous in front of 40,000 people too. So at the end of the day, to me, when we talk mental performance, we are all human. It's just how well we work with whatever it is we have, and how well we work with being human and understand it. So what I'm putting in front of you is actually called the Holmes-Rahe scale. This was actually something done in the 1970s, but it was really interesting, and they did do validation behind it. And so what they did is they looked at different things that could happen in life, and there's an adult version and even a kid version, and they assigned point values to it. And they basically said, these things cause stress. So do me a favor and go ahead and look through it and let me know if there's anything that surprises you or resonates with you. One of the things that surprised me was there's positive things on here. Marriage would generally be seen as a positive thing. Gaining a new family member, generally a positive thing. Change in financial status could be positive. It's change, right? And then the really interesting thing is they took the scale and they said, if your score adds up to more than 300 right now, you have a very high likelihood of getting sick. If you're between 150 and 300, you have a moderate risk, and below 150, you have a light risk. But basically they were saying that all these things basically end up being stressors on your body. And if you compile too many of them, it has impacts on our overall health, well-being, and immune system. And so when we look at this on the mental side, for a long time, we talked about stress management. And then you'll hear the language actually turn in our field. People will talk about energy and activation, because part of what we started to realize is it's not just the things we consider as negative stress, but it's actually the energy that we activate to get through any given day. And so for you all, as you come in and you're providers and caretakers during COVID, one of the things to recognize is all that energy you're putting in, there's a cost to it. When we put out energy, we have to look at basically when we're putting out high amounts of energy, how do we look at high recovery? And so one of the ways that I explain that is if you're going to drive a really fast sports car, you want a really good brake system on it, right? Because no one wants to be shooting down the road at 180 miles per hour and not be able to hit a brake system that's actually going to match and stop that car. And so for athletes, one of the things I also realized was my best performers, my most high functioning performers, oftentimes didn't need my help figuring out how to hit the gas harder. They needed the help finding the brake. They didn't always know how to brake well. And what tended to happen is there would be some point in the season where they would just burn out. You guys probably are all aware of caretaker burnout and different things around that. One of the things that's gotten really big in the special ops field is there's starting to be papers written on something called operator syndrome. And operator syndrome basically has seen that over long periods of time, we've been at war now for 19 years. A lot of guys have 19 plus deployments within the special ops community along that timeline. They've deployed almost every year, every other year of their life. They've been exposed to all kinds of different metals, from lead to uranium. And they're starting to see that when they put all these things together in operator syndrome, they're seeing a set of things that the medical field initially was treating as all separate, from sleep disorders to low testosterone to PTSD. And they're starting to realize, actually, if you look at a lot of these guys, you can compile a timeline and realize that the symptoms are the same. And then if you put them all together, you get this picture of what massive metal exposure, sleep deprivation, high levels of stress over long periods of time will do to a human being. And so we're realizing that it's not just good enough to take the foot off the gas and not deploy, but that it's really important that we help these guys figure out what their brake system is. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a break system for you guys. In mental performance, and it's fun to talk to people that have kind of physiology background on this. One of the things we love to talk about is how inexpensive breath is and how we use it all the time and we take it for granted. So I love to start with a simple just exercise of giving you guys 30 seconds to just breathe, but I want you to notice your breath. I don't want you to change anything. So as you start to bring your awareness to your breath, I want you to notice if you're breathing in through your mouth or your nose. I want you to notice how long your inhale is, how many seconds. And again, without changing anything, how long is your exhale? I want you to notice if you can feel air just go into your lungs, or if you feel it pushed all the way down to the point that you're diaphragmatically breathing or feeling belly movement. What do you guys notice?
I don't breathe a lot.
What else?
I feel like when I practice and breathing, I become calm and collective, and I have like better thoughts.
Okay, so yeah, that's awesome. We can talk a little bit about why that is. What else?
I think we're cheating a little bit, Ceci, because most of us teach breathing a lot to our patients here. So,
do you guys use PRI? How are you guys using breath?
I do not use PRI. I just tend to go with some like I call them box breathing strategies. Where I kind of like that a little bit more, and then even just teaching the concept of diaphragmatic breathing is used for like treating back pain and really treating like any type of pain. So yeah.
That's awesome. But I guess my question for you is, with as much as you know about it, when you stop and notice your breath, are you breathing the way you'd be telling someone else to breathe?
I think for the most part I do. When I'm at rest in something like this, I think there's times where I think if I'm in a stressful situation, that's where it gets a little bit different. But when I'm, relaxing, listening to your calm voice, then it's a little bit easier to maintain that.
Nice.
But definitely years of practice with that. So at least from my standpoint, maybe some others don't, but
I like it.
I was going to say that as soon as I saw the just breathe on the screen, I think that I've trained myself over the years to just like automatically go into like belly breathing.
Love it. Yes. The cue.
So yeah, it's just a weird cue. So, and then you said, don't think about it, just breathe. And I was like, oh crap, I'm already, kind of changing it, but I already trained myself. So, but it is very calming and relaxing. So
I like it. So I was laughing. Go ahead to the next slide, Alexis, because I was like, we don't need to put this next slide on here because we've got a bunch of people that are PTs and they know everything about diaphragmatic movement and the proper physiology of how breath should work. And so I don't want to go too far down this path with you. But one of the things that I do want to talk about is just noticing where you are on any given day and understanding, especially from your guys' perspective, how much your physiology impacts your mindset and the psychology that goes with it, and vice versa, right? When we cue into breathing right, we notice that breath puts us where we need to go. And so if you go ahead to the next slide, one of the three things that I like about the simplicity of breath is, when we think about how we're going to use it and what it does for us, and just the simplicity of some of the, belly versus chest, our breath is always in the present. Right? If you are focused on your breath, if you all of a sudden stop and pay attention to your breath, you are right now in this current moment. One of the differences we have from animal systems in terms of stress is our prefrontal cortex. It sits right here. It's this beautiful thing behind our forehead, right? And it means that after something wildly stressful has occurred, we have this amazing ability to hold on to it. And so, there's the great videos of a zebra that escapes being chased by a tiger. And then all of a sudden, the next thing is like the zebra drinking at a water hole. It's totally fine. It doesn't have PTSD. It's chilling out and it's drinking water and it's doing great. We don't, right? We sit and we stress about it. Something goes wrong at work today or at the office and we ruminate on it. And it's the last thing we think about before we go to bed because we have this wonderful built-in negativity bias. So there's this piece for us where we get caught in the past, or we even start to think about the future. What if this happens? Then what if this happens? Then what if this happens? One of the greatest things I see with high performers is just that ability to take a moment and come back into that present. Come back into right now. We use an acronym WIN, what's important now. So come right back into the present moment, re-lock in on that, let go of the stress of the past, understand that we can't yet control the future, and that this moment is actually what matters the most. And that by focusing on our breath, we do actually have the most clarity, the best thoughts, our brain's functioning the best, and everything else. So I will not lecture you guys on how to breathe, but I do want to give you guys 2 minutes during this time to stop and breathe and just connect. I was doing a yoga session this morning and I was laughing at myself because the yoga instructor told us to exhale all the air in our lungs. And I realized how shallow I had been breathing. And like you guys, I teach breathing every day. But it was a good reminder for me that in that moment, I had picked up enough stress that I had not been breathing very deeply. And my breaths had gotten really shallow. So if we can just take 2 minutes and for you guys, use what cues work best for you. If it's noticing the feeling of the air as it goes in through your nose and leaves, if it's counting breath, whatever that is, if it's putting a hand on the belly to feel movement, but we'll go ahead and just take 2 minutes and lock into breath. And we'll begin. And even if your thoughts wander, just bring them back to your breath. Our thoughts are naturally going to wander. Just come back. Awesome. That's 2 minutes. So like you guys, I teach breath. It's one of the things I teach. I always was shocked at the end of the baseball season. I tried to spend my off seasons in North Carolina. That's where I live. That's where I bought a house a few years back. And at the end of the season, I would drive down from Cleveland, bring my car back down to North Carolina. About an 8.5 hour drive. And it always shocked me to realize that the first hour of the drive, I wanted to crawl out of my skin. That I was so used to multitasking and being in so many places for so many people and judging and juggling front office needs and coaching staff needs and player needs, that shutting down my brain or just getting to be able to do only one task and drive was really hard. if you noticed in the last 2 minutes that you thought about the different things that you could, should, need to be doing, or if you found your thoughts wandering a lot, again, I use kind of the baseball players that hate yoga because they're inflexible and have trouble with mobility are also the ones that probably could use it the most. If you find in this time 2 minutes is hard on you, it's probably a nice little cue or telltale or trigger that's some space to be singularly focused and in a present moment is probably good for you. We live in a world that dings and pings and reminds us of stuff and vibrates on our wrists and on our watches. And we are slowly struggling to be singularly focused. And it's hard on our brain, it's hard on our body, and it's not a way we perform particularly well, right? We perform our best when we can turn our attention singularly to one thing and put full attention and effort towards it. And attention is one of the currencies we use for mental performance and how good we can be at any given thing. So I'd ask you guys to just kind of reflect on these questions. What is the energy output you need to have in a day? And it sounds like you guys are creating a really high energy environment. And then next slide, how are you feeding your body daily? And that can be everything from media intake, social media intake, who you're connecting with, who you're listening to, what news you're feeding yourself, how you're nutritionally feeding yourself, the oxygen you breathe, the people you interact with. To me, that's all part of how you're feeding your body daily. How are you managing your daily routines? And so I started off by saying that the best performers I know had figured out their daily routines. That's going to look different for every person. I loved a post recently by someone that was saying, I hate when people tell me to wake up and meditate in the morning. I've got 2 young kids and meditation is, trying to fix breakfast and cleaning diapers and, trying not to walk out of the house with food on my clothing. So everyone's routines look different. You have to figure out what works for where you are in life and what your lifestyle is. But there should be habits that you're forming that maintain the level of performance that you want. And then lastly, what's one recovery technique you could put into place tomorrow? And so we talked a little bit of breath here because it's super simple. It's with you everywhere you go. But each of you may have a way, and it might even be getting lost in the woods for 12 miles, ways that you can possibly look at recovery. Maybe that's not the most soothing thing, although a walk in the woods can be. And there's really good science on even just any green space, even the color green, but getting outside. What's something that you could put in place for yourself tomorrow? Alexis mentioned if you go to menti.com and use that code, and Alexis, maybe you can jump in a little bit more on how to do this. We can actually develop kind of a cool chart on the screen of all this.
Ceci is the one that actually told us about this concept when she saw a presentation that she was in for Google. And they use this to collect like a word cloud. If everybody like goes on your phone and you go to Menti, all it says like give us this code. You punch in that 44, 23, 33, and 2, and you can throw in there 1 or 2 or 3 recovery techniques that that mean something to you, and then it'll bring out this word cloud, and I'll show that as we finish up before we sign off, so everyone can see what you guys entered in.
Cool. I would just say, I would just say in closing, a big thing that I realized is on the most basic level, the field of mental performance is trying to make common sense common practice. A lot of people know what they should be doing, but they don't practice it every day. And so helping with creating the behavior change, so that becomes common practice. And then I would say at the more advanced level, it's helping people recognize when their habits are going to be abnormal and accept their abnormality, embrace it, and really leverage that to be its peak. And so on the basic level is what common sense, common practice for you guys as you care for others and should be caring for yourselves. And then on that peak side, how are you embracing those abnormal habits that make you guys so special in what you are, and really leveraging those and celebrating them, and making sure that you don't get kind of dragged back down into normal.
Eric just said that the code isn't working for Menti. I'll go in and check it in a minute while you guys are doing Q&A with Ceci. So I'll just open it up. I'm going to go out of the presentation because we don't need it right this second. But if anybody has questions for Ceci while she's here, now's the time.
Yeah. Can I answer any questions for anyone?
Ceci, you talked about the concept of us as humans, I believe is kind of the point that you're making, have a negativity bias.
Yeah.
Can you talk more into maybe why that is and
Yeah.
strategies on how to change your mindset to be more positive in that moment?
So one of the really interesting things when you think about the way our brain is hardwired, so if you actually look at brain structure and you look at like location of different things, we're actually built to survive, not necessarily to perform, right? And so the negativity bias is actually evolutionary, where if you watched a caveman, your buddy, eat a red berry and he died some horrible death where he secreted, every fluid out of every organ, you're going to want to remember what that red berry looks like. And so if you look at where the hippocampus is located and amygdala is located, they're talking pretty strongly about like what not to do to continue to survive. Whereas if you watch your buddy eat a blueberry and he thinks it's great, it would be nice to know to pick out that berry, but it's not going to keep you alive. And so the brain actually recalls negativity or negative events better than it recalls positive events. It's part of why before we go to bed at night, you're going to recall negative experiences much more likely than you'd recall positive experiences, because the brain is basically telling you what not to mess up, to stay alive, to protect either you physically or your ego. And so we really have to make a deliberate habit of positives if that's where we want our brain to be and that's what we want our mindset to be. And it's not going to come naturally and you're going against the grain. That's one of those abnormalities. And so an average mindset is going to bend towards negative, and that's where all the research on gratitude, if you're listening to anything by Brene Brown or any of those pieces, really comes out. And it's why it's a practice, and why people have gratitude journals or start dinner with their family on something they're grateful for, because unless you put it deliberately in place and unless you're deliberately tilting that scale, you're going to naturally go towards the negativity bias. And so being self-critical can make you good at what you do because you're willing to get better. But I always say like the difference between good and great is when people stop just being critical of themselves and learn to leverage their strengths and celebrate their strengths and really acknowledge what they are.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Ceci, is there research on like if you practice that gratitude? So, like I know myself that like if I do it makes me feel better, but there is research on that. That's cool.
Martin Seligman out of University of Pennsylvania has done a huge amount on positive psychology, and Karen Rivich has done a huge amount on resilience. So when you look at both positive psychology literature, resilience literature, Hardy literature, Brene Brown has a really different style of research, so maybe not so classic. She does more focus groups, but you'll find a huge amount of gratitude in her literature base. And the research she's done, she's much more of a qualitative researcher, but yeah, it absolutely comes out. And then even if you look at an fMRI of people when they're practicing gratitude, you'll actually see the brain and different areas light up. And so there's been a fair amount of research that just talks about how important gratitude in particular is as an emotion and the impact it has on parasympathetic activation for the body.
I just put a new code. I just like redid the entire little quickie thing so we could try this new code is 46395, and I'll write that on the slide if I get a sec.
You rock, Alexis. Thank you.
Oh, please. This is absurd. Yeah, I put the number in the chat just so everyone sees.
Love it. Any other questions? These are awesome, guys.
Ceci, I think that's really interesting stuff on the gratitude, especially like with Thanksgiving just happening. Like I know I think I heard that spoken everywhere. I was listening to like every podcast I was listening to, everything going on is all on gratitude. But I don't think I made that connection that you're talking about of kind of tipping the scale away from that negativity. what are the best practices you think for practicing that gratitude? I think you mentioned a gratitude, like just sharing with your family. What are some other practices that you?
Yeah. Some people do gratitude journals, and actually nowadays you can even find them. So you can find like date books that'll literally have like gratitude pieces built into them, in part because it, the literature, like all things, has also gone into the pop psychology. So that can be real, but I think the biggest part is to figure out how to make it part of your day. And so whether that's something that the family does, there's an exercise that I think came out of UPenn called Hunt the Good Stuff. And they recommend it for families where like you sit down at the end of the day and you say, okay, like what were the good parts about today? For my athletes, we would do they'd keep books in their lockers at the clubhouse. And we basically say on the back of the left sheet, so the back of the page from yesterday, you'd write up a scouting report on how you played that day. And the point is to be objective, right? So just write what happened. And then the start of the next page on the right side would be 2 things you want to focus on the next day. So the 2 things that maybe didn't go right that you want to focus on and get better at. But then underneath would be a piece on, okay, but what went well? What did you do well that you want to repeat? And the message there was that you can only write 2 things to focus on tomorrow because you really can't change behavior on more than 1 or 2 things, but you can maintain lots of behaviors. So it's a whole open section. You can write as much as you want about what to maintain for the next day. And we liked that a lot because like for hitters in baseball, they have a tendency to change their mechanics constantly and chase a swing. And part of that's because they don't maintain what's going right. And then they'll throw baby out with bathwater. And so then we'd say, hey, at the end of the day, close that notebook, leave it in your locker. Don't bring it home to whoever you care about. And know that when you come back in, you're going to open it up. You got your 2 things to focus on. You got all the things that you want to maintain that went well. And then you're going to flip the page at the end of the game. And so just getting them in the habit of recognizing that it's really important to sustain the successes and to keep those successes. I know the Pittsburgh Pirates always practice 3 ups, 2 down, 1 forward. So at the end of anything they do, they'll say, what were our 3 ups? What are our 2 downs? What's our 1 way to go forward? Like our 1 thing to consider moving forward for the next time. And they like that. I like their mental performance coach is awesome, Bernie Holiday. But that naturally tips the scale to 3 positives, only 2 negatives, and 1 thing moving forward. And so just paying attention to that scale is naturally going to be off. But saying it out loud or writing it would always be things that I would tell you are powerful. If you do it in your own head, if it's part of your meditation, that's phenomenal. I'm not saying that's not a good thing. But anytime you can either give it to others or take the time to really write it down for yourself, I think that's even better.
I feel like what helps me every day, like I wake up, I, get to work, and then I write like 5 things I do that day. And I make sure that like the 5 things are crossed off by the end of the day. And then it makes me feel like 1, I accomplished something. 2, I stuck to like what I need to get done. And then, then I can write like the next day, have another list. And I feel like that keeps me on track, and it keeps me like motivated and positive to finish things. And, and so I don't get so stressed out about everything what's going around. I have my list of 5 things I need to do every day.
So Audrey, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I love that. I love that you limit it too. So there's a bad habit with to-do lists, and there's actually all kinds of science on people that make to-do lists feel great about making the to-do list and then never get anything done on it.
Yeah.
Because we do get a little bit of an endorphin kick the minute we write down something like that. So I think you're hitting the nail on the head. 5 things that's totally manageable. You can control that. And at the end of the day, you can reflect and that you accomplished some things that you needed to do, and it keeps you focused. So again, it kind of centers the attention on the 5 things that might be most essential or that would feel good to have gotten done. So I love that. I think that's definitely a great practice.
All right, I'm just gonna pop back in here if that's all right, everybody, because we will have some time to do Q&A after as well. So if there's anything else and Ceci happens to be around, then we can roll with it. So we just wanted to kind of bring back the presentation from all that we've consumed tonight, just talking about discomfort and forging strong bonds. This group seems to be so comfortable with things like breath work. So it may not be something like that because you are regular practitioners of it. Battle drills and training and what we do each day and how we kind of immerse ourselves regularly. Thinking about competition or lack thereof, or the competition within, to keep ourselves growing and inspired. The 5 rules that we have that speak to us, that sometimes will change from one day to the next, or maybe 1 year to the next. One may highlight for you more than another. And then reacting to stress and deliberate breath, and how our body can be shaking in one situation and completely calm in another, just depending on that comfort zone again. And how we interpret that is the important part, because those things that we're obviously, surging with adrenaline sometimes makes our hands shake, and that's okay. Everyone has that moment in their life, and how we breathe through that can really take us through clarity. Next week, we're going to talk about a warrior's pause. So we're going to take the idea of mindfulness, and we call it weaponizing mindfulness, kind of making mindfulness something that we move forward on a lot and kind of attack. We had somebody say to us after we did the breath work that they felt like they could go on the attack. They felt very clear. Order and chaos, we're going to talk about the scale and how we can move things one side to the other. Talk again about the body under stress and kind of magnify that order and chaos and when it gets to that chaos side, and talk a little bit about what Ceci brought up today, and the body in calm presence as well. So that's going to be next week, and we just have overall Q&A. So if there's anything that anybody wants to bring up, I'm going to exit the screen so that we can see everyone's faces better. So just give me a second to stop my sharing, and we should be good to go. All right, and it's late for some of you guys, but wanted to just check in and see what's resonating. If there's any slide you want me to pull up, please do. Please let me know, and I will. And other than that, let's hear from you guys. Anybody feel like just ready to power down from the day after having this breath work session? And nice, calm, Ceci's voice is always so calming to me. It's my favorite.
I got one last one, Ceci. With the scowl that you showed, or earlier on, I can't remember the name of it, but it kind of had all the different life events. Obviously a lot of those things are not changeable. So as far as putting the brakes on, you can't do much about. And so I'm assuming some of your first methods are probably breath and meditation for kind of, if you're high on that scale. But what are some of the other, just easy techniques that you can implement for that?
Yeah, I think easy ones are actually the science behind green space. Like I mentioned, kind of off the cuff, is really great. Anytime you can get out into green space and cast your vision as far a distance as you can, that actually, from a neuropsychology standpoint, has been shown to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Sleep is obviously a really huge one. So if things are going to be stressful, the ability to get sleep. One of the things that we find is, both having tough days and then either chronic partial sleep deprivation or severe sleep deprivation really throw the body for a loop. So just being, the harder you want to push, the better you want to recover. So, and then there's different things for different people. We've hooked soldiers up to biofeedback, and for some of them, we find that talking to their family at the end of the day is wonderfully relaxing and resetting. And for others, we find that's actually a very stressful event. And so I think it's just being mindful for you of where you actually find relaxation. Do you need alone time? Do you like time with others? I think the thing that is hard for all of us is there's a lot of good literature too on kind of type A or hard driving personalities tend to use a drink sometimes to shut off. And one of the things to realize is some of the stuff we dig into, drinks, video games, actually tend to have the opposite effect. So if you guys have ever looked at heart rate variability work, you're going to notice that if you have any drinks at all, that you're going to see a drop in your heart rate variability. And you're also going to notice with video game playing, we have it increases our sense of control, but it tends to keep our adrenaline pretty high. And so just paying attention to what is truly relaxing or what is truly engaging of your parasympathetic nervous system, and finding some space. And it doesn't have to be getting 10 hours of sleep at night, or it doesn't have to be a half hour of motivation or meditation. I think that's the piece we miss. There's a lot of really good literature that says that anything that's mindfulness can be 20 minutes accumulated across a day. It doesn't have to be 20 minutes in one sitting. And again, even the green space literature says that getting outside, being able to get into any type of green space, direct sunlight, and casting your vision to farther distances helps reset. So it can be just small little moments throughout a day. And that would be my big thing to say is, if you're seeing clients for 12 hours straight, find those small moments. Because a lot of us are too exhausted to sit down for a 45-minute mindfulness meditation at the end of the day. It's just not, it doesn't become realistic. So I had scouts where even they would do like 3 minutes of headspace. And we'd consider that, the start of a success.
I think all the Whoop users are familiar with the HRV effects of the alcohol effects on the HRV.
Yes, I'm not the biggest Whoop fan. I'm more of an Aura fan if we're going to go for like wearables on the wrist or hand. But all that being said, I think Whoop has shattered a lot of soldiers' dreams of how well they handle alcohol because they get their scores the next day. And I think it's broken a lot of hearts on that. Most of our soldiers like to party hard and drink hard too. Sorry.
Not just warriors.
Weekend warriors.
Yeah.
Hey, Ceci, I had a couple questions. So I find myself, I'm a big runner, and I find myself every day coming home and craving kind of like my typical hour run.
Yeah.
I very much live on a bike path where I get a lot of green space and of just untampered land, and it's awesome. But what I've also noticed is when I come home, I kind of crave like I'm a big card player too, so I crave like game theory and like poker and chess and this kind of idea of like re-stimulating that.
Yeah.
Can you touch on like why that may be, or like why some of us like come out of this relaxing state and then want to jump back into something so dramatic?
Yeah. So I would say a couple of things. One, the recognition that within all game theory, right, like part of every game is how to keep you hooked and how to keep you doing it. So even if you're, doing games like poker or different pieces like that, there's a stimulation for it, right? A reward factor within it. And so oftentimes when we have been on kind of the gas pedal, it's more comfortable for us to keep on the gas pedal than it is to hit the brake, right? So if I've been multitasking for 3 months straight working in baseball, it's more comfortable to keep multitasking than it is to stop, because you've gotten in that habit. So I think sometimes at the end of the day, we look at ways to actually maintain the activation level with maybe a sense of more control. So one of the questions I'd have is stuff surrounding game theory having the same effect that in some ways video games would have for someone, where they can keep the activation level going, but it's in a space where they have more control, or kind of the rules are always going to be what they are. And so you can better control and strategize within that space because you understand it. So that might actually be a way to keep your activation up. And your brain kind of getting the opportunity to chew on a different set of problems, or cross train, if you will, after your day. And then the thing I'd say with running is, especially if you're able to not disassociate while running, if you're able to stay kind of in tune with your body, that's probably better for parasympathetic activation, especially if it's an aerobic paced run. But I mean, I think some of what I tell you too is like, again, sometimes that cross training or the ability to apply your brain to something else is fine, and that's healthy and that's great. Just recognize it might not be the most relaxing thing, and you might actually be maintaining that level of kind of energy and feel that you've been doing all day and just bringing it to another sphere. But it would be interesting looking at like your biofeedback during that, because you could actually hook yourself up and look at kind of how you run at work, and then whether if you had your baseline for HRV and what you were normally, you could actually see when you were playing the card game if that was relaxing, stressful, or what the changes were.
Look at that.
Yeah.
You guys
Zephyr systems, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alexis.
No, it's all good. I was saying you probably have all kinds of toys to play with, so it's like in your world. Um, I'm gonna hop over to the Menti thing really quickly just to show you guys what that looks like. I'll share my screen, my Chrome, one more time. So you can see these are the results that came in that you guys typed in. Hopefully you recognize these.
I love it. Yeah. Adam Grant wrote a really good book called Give and Take, where he talked about people that are givers. So people that give with no thought of necessarily what they would get back. And one of the things he talked about is givers and burnout. And he actually noted that when givers are burning out, stopping giving to others actually doesn't sit as well with them as finding different ways to give. And so I love the person that said helping their coworkers, because I think that actually can be an interesting way that we can recover as long as we're reasonable about how we do it.
I think it'll be interesting too to see these ready rooms, if you want to call them that you guys have in your locations, to see each other maybe doing these things, catching 5 minutes of lunchtime to breathe. Things like that can be really normalized and encouraged, help you get through the day.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Just, we talked about the PTs, you all know this and do this with your patients. And so, looking at the call a friend and help my coworkers, that starts walking through the door. And so you see, your admin person looking, stressed, or, they're going to go through something, sharing these things with your folks around you and on your small teams. And maybe, just having some accountability with each other to remind each other of these things, where if you're, you're looking crazy, or if you're looking, you've had 5 clients and 3 of them were late, hey, you need to take a minute or 2 to just compose yourself, because of, again, how you may look. So it's just an accountability mechanism for each other.
Yeah, if there's anything I can, if you guys have more questions, I'm on Twitter as Edge Mentality is the handle that I use. And I'm pretty good about answering any questions that pop up on there, but happy to be of help to you. Alexis and Eric certainly know how to reach me. So if there's anything I can do to be helpful to any of you guys, I'm always here to help, and really a pleasure to talk to everyone tonight. I appreciate everyone's time, especially after a long day of work. I know you guys are taking care of a lot of people.
Oh, one more quick question.
Yeah.
If you've got someone who is having trouble sleeping or falling asleep, and meditation maybe isn't cutting it for them or something, is there a provider that we should refer them to? Or I always struggle with that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So we always kind of do a sleep hygiene check, right? Like, is all your basic sleep hygiene in gear. So sometimes those are people that like to try to fall asleep with the TV on, and then they'll say they wake up, in the first hour of sleep, and there's blue light flashing. So that makes sense. How much light is in the room? Do you have a pre-bed routine? What do you do before bed when you're getting exercise? If all that stuff's in gear, then you're looking at someone that's probably used to either identifying insomnia, or you're looking at physiological problems. So there are really good sleep scientists in California. Stanford has really good stuff, but a lot of them will do, we use Dr. Winter, who's out of Charlottesville, Virginia, for the Indians. So you can either look at actual people that Dr. Winter is his specialty is neurology, and that's how he ended up in sleep. So there's some different backgrounds there. But then sometimes, like, we on Fort Bragg have a licensed clinical social worker that's actually trained in insomnia training, a cognitive behavioral therapy for it. So you may just look in the area and see if any of the providers have the credentialing for working on insomnia, if you think it's more of a mental component than something like apnea. The nice thing about them getting a sleep test is that you can figure out if it's physiological or psychological.
And then, is there a sleep hygiene checklist that you like or work off of?
Not off the top of my head, but I will say one of the things that was amazing to me is Dr. Winter would come into spring training, and in 10 minutes, he would run through 10 minutes per person, 5 to 10 minutes. He would run through the entirety of like our 60 guys in Major League camp. And so one of the things is it doesn't necessarily have to be exhaustive. I look a lot at the environment they're sleeping in. Dr. Winter used to say duct tape's your friend. So no light whatsoever, alarm clocks, everything else. He loved blue light glasses. And then I look a lot at pre-bed routines. So what are you doing in the 4 hours pre-sleep? And then in particularly the half hour, do you have cues and triggers that you're starting to shut your body down? And I do find for a lot of people, just cleaning up their sleep hygiene and then having some cue that they're going to start bed preparation a half an hour out, whether that's hot showers or tart cherry juice or a sleepy time tea or getting into bed and reading and dimming lights. A lot of people have really bad sleep hygiene. If you wear your Apple Watch to bed and it dings on you, I mean, just taking away a lot of the stimuluses and doing that regularly and starting a half an hour early. If you've around anyone like little kids, babies oftentimes have their pre-bedtime routine and we, that's right. We should have the same thing when possible.
Kelsey, I actually have something with Evolution's header on it. That's the full sleep hygiene sheet.
There you go.
Oh, you
So
do?
awesome. Yeah, it has a bunch of concussion stuff at the top. I'll just take the concussion stuff off. It's the same stuff.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Success.
I like
right
it.
there.
It goes back to you guys making each other better.
Yeah, right.
Magic. Our work here is done.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Mike, did you have anything else tonight?
No, that was great. I think we really appreciate you guys hopping on with us and doing this with us. And we're always looking forward for more. I always feel like I could be on here and talk to you all for like 5 straight hours. So I'm gonna zip my mouth a little bit and let everybody go.
Yeah, take some notes, write them down.
Right.
All right, great, guys. Thank you guys so much for